This morning, breaking news, the Pfizer vaccine lands in Australia. Retrial begins for the man accused of Hayley Dodd's murder. A Perth pensioner in hospital with severe burns after his home erupts in flames. And royal baby, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex reveal they're expecting.
This is 7 Morning News, live from Perth with Tina Altieri.
Good morning. We begin with confirmation the first doses of a COVID vaccine have just arrived on Australian shores. The vaccine rollout has been described as the largest logistical challenge since World War II. But the federal government says our states are magnificently prepared and the first jabs can be delivered early next week. Jessica Page is following developments, and Jess, this was a top secret mission.
It was, Tina, because what was on board has been described as the most precious of cargoes by Australian officials. 142,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine shipped from Belgium that will be stored in a secure top-secret facility in Sydney before being distributed around the country. 6 hubs will eventually be set up across WA, 3 initially at Perth Children's Hospital, Albany and Port Hedland, specially equipped to store the vaccine at the required minus 70-degree temperatures. The first 80,000 doses will be released next week for jabs to start as soon as Monday. The Federal Health Minister, Greg Hunt, says that is slightly ahead of schedule.
They will now be subject to security, quality assurance, in particular to ensure that temperature maintenance has been preserved throughout the course of the flight, to ensure the integrity of the doses and to ensure that there has been no damage. Batch testing of some of the doses will be undertaken by the TGA.
High-risk quarantine and airport staff will be first in line, followed by healthcare workers and aged care and disability staff and residents. No timetable has been set yet for public access, and experts are warning that there'll still be a need for borders and lockdowns. The vaccine does not necessarily reduce transmission of the virus. Tina?
Thanks so much for that update, Jess. The Perth security guard who sparked the 5-day lockdown, which affected more than 2 million West Australians, is still in hospital quarantine this morning, even though he's been in there for the standard 14 days. Authorities say he doesn't have the symptoms of the virus, but he's still testing positive. A review of the quarantine hotel failure is due later this week. There's only one new local COVID case recorded in Victoria on day 3 of its statewide lockdown. They're on track to see their harsh restrictions lifted at midnight on Wednesday, but Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews says it's still too early to guarantee the lockdown will end on time. The woman is connected to the Holiday Inn outbreak. A second case has been recorded in hotel quarantine. New South Wales has hit an encouraging new milestone, recording 29 straight days without a local COVID infection. It's the longest the state has gone without a community case of coronavirus since the pandemic began. But health authorities don't want residents to become complacent.
There's always a chance that the virus may re-emerge. It's vital that we continue to maintain social distancing and good hygiene, wear masks on public transport and come forward for testing with even the mildest of cold-like symptoms.
The government is also advising against non-essential travel to Victoria while the state battles its COVID outbreak. A Perth pensioner already battling cancer is this morning in hospital with severe burns. Neighbours ran to rescue the war veteran when his Coolangup home erupted in flames.
Good morning. The 82-year-old man remains here at Fiona Stanley Hospital in a stable condition, still receiving treatment for those severe burns he suffered in the raging inferno. Neighbours told 7 News they raised the alarm around 2:30 yesterday afternoon when they saw smoke billowing from the home. They say they tried to pull him out to safety, but the flames were just too ferocious. It took 11 fire crews to control the fire, which gutted the Coolangup home. Witnesses believe it was sparked by a generator in the shed, but fire investigators are still looking into the cause. The war veteran's hero neighbours say he didn't even make it out with the shirt on his back, but he did manage to rescue his beloved ginger cat. It's understood the man will spend some time here at Fiona Stanley Hospital in the burns unit.
The man accused of killing teenager Hayley Dodd is facing court as a retrial into the alleged murder begins. Francis Walk won an appeal against his earlier conviction for the murder. 17-year-old Hayley was last seen in Badgingarra almost 22 years ago. Her body has never been discovered. The retrial has been set down for 9 weeks. Premier Mark McGowan is this morning being accused of basing his COVID-19 response on polling rather than health advice. Liberal leader Zac Kirkup says the public has been played for mugs. The polling was paid for by the state government to track public sentiment on issues including the hard border and AFL Grand Final. Mr Kirkup used freedom of information laws to obtain the results of the polling, which was commissioned by the Department of Premier and Cabinet over 3 months at the height of the pandemic. The Premier's office says Mr McGowan was not briefed on the data collected and that all decisions were based on health advice from the Chief Health Officer and Police Commissioner. Embattled Crown Resorts Chief Executive Ken Barton has stepped down. Former Federal Minister and current Chairperson Helen Coonan will take control while a replacement is found. Mr Barton is the latest resignation following an explosive report which found the company was unsuitable to operate a Sydney casino. And Perth's Chief Casino Officer has stood aside after it was revealed he'd maintained friendships and gone on fishing trips with 2 members of Crown Perth's compliance team. Well, Australia has reimposed hotel quarantine for New Zealand travellers, bursting the border bubble. It comes after Auckland was plunged into lockdown.
Good morning. A fresh outbreak of COVID-19 in the New Zealand community has led to the trans-Tasman bubble bursting. 3 people from the same household in Auckland have tested positive. A 4th is showing symptoms but has so far returned a negative test. That's forced all of Auckland into a 3-day lockdown. As a result, health authorities here in Australia held an urgent late-night meeting where it was decided to declare New Zealand a red zone. What that effectively means is for the next 72 hours, anyone arriving here in Australia from New Zealand must go into 14 days of mandatory hotel quarantine. Professor Paul Kelly, the Australian Chief Medical Officer, says that it will now be up to the states to decide how to manage those people who have already arrived from New Zealand in the past few days to see if they pose a risk. Another meeting will be held later today to see if any more steps need to be taken.
Senior Labor figures say the government has questions to answer over the alleged rape of a young woman at Parliament House. A former Liberal Party staffer claims she was sexually assaulted by a colleague back in 2019. Political reporter Olivia Leeming has more from Canberra.
These disturbing allegations have been made by a former media advisor for Defence Minister Linda Reynolds. Brittany Higgins was just 24 years old when she alleges she was sexually assaulted by a Liberal Party colleague in the Minister's office at Parliament House in March 2019. The accused resigned shortly after. Ms Higgins says she was asked to attend a meeting with Linda Reynolds to discuss the incident in the same office where the alleged rape occurred, which a government spokesperson has since conceded was a mistake.
I told him to stop.
Did he?
No.
How many times would you estimate you said to him to stop?
I felt like it was on a loop endlessly. At least half a dozen. I was crying the whole way through it.
I think we need to hear from the Minister, Linda Reynolds. This is an assault that occurred in her office. There are questions about whether or not this young woman was pressured to choose between her job and reporting the matter to police.
ACT Police have told 7 News they received a report in April 2019. The complainant chose not to proceed with making a formal complaint. If the victim wishes to proceed, they'll assess the case and make a decision about whether there's sufficient evidence. Ms Higgins says she ultimately chose not to make a complaint to protect the party and her job. The investigation remains open.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg has hinted the federal government is considering permanently increasing the Jobseeker subsidy. The government has been under pressure to increase the base rate of the payment when the COVID supplement ends next month.
We effectively doubled the safety net during the course of the pandemic. That really helped those on lower incomes. That has been tapering down over recent months. That ends in March, and at that point we will make a decision and an announcement about that future rate.
New data reveals the number of workers on JobKeeper halved from September to December. Seven West Media has announced a landmark deal with Google, with the tech giant set to pay for news. Here's network finance editor Gemma Acton.
Good morning. Well, we don't have many details yet, but Google and Seven West Media now have 30 days to thrash out the specifics of the deal. Under the agreement, Google will pay Seven for content that appears on its News Showcase platform.
It means that we get, sort of a fair level of payment, for those, particular news gathering services, and just underpins our future.
It comes just in the nick of time for Google, with the government's news media bargaining code headed for the Senate as early as tomorrow and expected to become law within weeks. It's believed, but not confirmed, that if Google demonstrates it can strike deals on its own, the government may exempt the technology giant from the new legislation. Facebook is the other major technology platform caught by the code, and Treasurer Josh Frydenberg says he held discussions with its founder Mark Zuckerberg over the weekend. Google News Showcase launched earlier this month, with a handful of local publishers already signed up.
You're watching Seven's Morning News live from Perth. Coming up, quarantine casualty. Queensland set to lose a major sporting event over a COVID rule stoush. Plus, royal baby news. Harry and Meghan announced they're expecting. We'll have all the details from the US next.
Lockdown. Disasters. Why the pressure on women is worse than you think.
It doesn't surprise me at all that women don't know. For a long time, doctors haven't known.
The new stress syndrome on the rise in Perth.
Thought I was having a heart attack.
The signs to look out for and what to do if it strikes. 7 News tonight.
One lucky West Aussie is hopefully beginning a run of luck for the rest of us after scoring $2.5 million in Lotto over the weekend. The ticket was sold at Lucky Charms Secret Harbour. It was one of 8 Division 1 winning entries right across the country. If you missed out, there's a $50 million Powerball draw this Thursday. It's the second biggest jackpot, this year. And another royal baby is on the way, with Harry and Meghan revealing they're expecting their second child later this year. US correspondent David Woywood is covering the story.
Good morning. Yes, happy news here for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Meghan and Harry confirming that baby number 2 is on the way. They made the announcement through a spokesperson in a statement today, saying, "We can confirm that Archie is going to be a big brother. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are overjoyed to be expecting their second child." This picture of the happy couple was also released, a beaming portrait of the expected parents at their Californian home. It's unclear when Meghan is due. Their joy following last year's heartbreak, however, the Duchess of Sussex revealing her miscarriage in a deeply personal piece for the New York Times. But today, their joy clear, set to be parents again, and for baby Archie, now nearly 2 years old.
Look, a duck. That's not a duck, that's a rabbit. Yeah, here, can you turn the...
A baby brother or sister is on the way. Today also, bittersweet for Harry. 37 years ago to the day since Princess Diana announced her pregnancy with Prince Harry to the world. But not all are on board with the young couple who, after winning a court battle this week to protect their privacy, went public. One British tabloid leading with, "Publicity-shy woman tells 7.67 billion people I'm pregnant." The Queen and Duke of Edinburgh reportedly knew about the pregnancy, but caught off guard with the announcement, have since offered their congratulations. This, Prince Charles's 5th grandchild and the Queen's 10th great-grandchild.
Guinea has officially declared it's dealing with an Ebola pandemic after 3 people died from the virus. A total of 7 cases have been confirmed in the West African nation. The deaths are the first since the 3-year pandemic ended back in 2016, which killed more than 11,000 people across the region. The virus has a much higher death rate than COVID-19, but it is also harder to infect others. 14 members of the same family have died in a road accident in India. A minibus carrying the family ploughed through a road divider, crashing head-on into a truck on a busy highway. Police say it appears the driver fell asleep at the wheel. 4 children survived the crash but were critically injured. Queensland's strict quarantine rules could cost the Gold Coast its premier surfing event. Here's Tamara Brow.
Well, Queensland's strict quarantine rules could cost the state dearly once again. The Corona Open, formerly known as the Quicksilver Pro, has called the Gold Coast home since the late 1990s, but we now understand that the World Surf League is shopping that event around to other states that are more cashed up from Queensland after it asked the state government to foot the hotel quarantine bill for its surfers and their entourage, but the state government said no. The AFL and the NRL both had to pay their way while here during the pandemic, and the WSL will now have to do the same, which is why it is looking further afield at places like New South Wales, which is understood to have millions of dollars set aside to lure events there during the pandemic, while Queensland is only able to offer up around $500 million to help host the Corona Open here at Snapper Rocks on the southern end of the Gold Coast. At the moment, the WSL does have the Corona Open listed as tentative on its website, but we do hope to have a definitive answer around whether or not that event will go ahead here in the near distant future. Obviously, tourism operators are desperate to keep the event here. It does inject millions of dollars into the local economy every single year.
You're watching 7's Morning News live from Perth. Coming up, Novak Djokovic through at the Australian Open, but doubts remain over his mystery injury. And the cricket stars in action in Sydney. Novak Djokovic has refused to shed any light on the extent of his abdominal injury after advancing to the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. The world number one initially described the injury as a muscle tear, and while he did show some signs of discomfort in last night's 4-set win over Milos Raonic, questions remain over the severity of the problem.
Well, there was no preparation basically for this match. I used every single hour that I had since I finished the last match against Taylor to recover.
Djokovic says he would have withdrawn from the tournament if it wasn't a Grand Slam. Richmond coach Damien Hardwick insists his marriage breakup won't derail the club's AFL Premiership defence. Hardwick opened up to his players when they returned a month ago and says they're fully focused on round one.
You know, we always speak about things that are distractions in our lives and distractions that may bring about the demise of great teams.
Hardwick is in a relationship with a Tigers staff member. Some of Aussie cricket's biggest stars are in action in the One-Day Cup competition. James Patterson helped get Victoria off to a flyer against New South Wales in Sydney. The Blues were reeling at 2 for 6 early and in desperate need of a Steve Smith rescue mission.
He hits that even harder. So does that get there? Does that get to the boundary? Yes.
Smith made 127 as the Blues made 9 for 318 off their 50 overs. And India will take a 249-run lead into day 3 of the second test against England in Chennai after dismissing the tourists for 134 in their first innings. Stay with us. Your weather is coming up right after the break.
It was the Wild West.
Police think Lisa Govan is dead.
It's a serious crime homicide.
We've never seen this before.
Do you know how Lisa Govan died?
Yes, I do.
Welcome back. Now let's check the weather details for you and a rapid rise in temperature for the start of the working week. Right now in our city it's 35 degrees and we're heading for a top of 37 degrees. Let's take a look around the metro area. 38 in Kalamunda today, a cooler 28 degrees in Rottnest and 35 degrees all along our beautiful coast. And the outlook for Perth, let's take a look at this. Slightly cooler temperatures for tomorrow, 34 degrees we can expect. Wednesday, 26, Thursday, 24, Friday around the 27 degree mark, Saturday and Sunday, 29, 30 degrees, and then heating up again for the start of the next working week, Monday, 34 degrees. And that's 7's Morning News live from Perth. We'll have updates throughout the day with bulletins both at 4 and 6 o'clock. I'm Tina Altieri. Thanks for joining me.